What if the world you live in was never meant to free you? Take a moment to really think about that. What if reality itself is not what it appears to be? What if the systems you were born into, religion, society, even your own thoughts, were designed not to awaken you but to keep you asleep? Throughout history, there have always been whispers of a forbidden truth, not shouted from pulpits, not written into official textbooks, but hidden, buried, and deliberately erased. Ancient knowledge that claimed this world is not the ultimate reality. Knowledge that suggested humanity is trapped inside a carefully constructed illusion. Knowledge so dangerous that entire belief systems were built to destroy it. This knowledge had a name: Gnosticism. Unlike traditional religions that demand belief, obedience, or faith, Gnosticism made a shocking claim. It said that truth is not found outside of you. It said that salvation does not come from worship. And it said that the world itself may be fundamentally flawed. To the Gnostics, reality was not a sacred creation to be blindly accepted. It was a mystery to be questioned, a structure to be examined, and possibly a prison to be escaped. For centuries, these ideas were labeled heretical. Gnostic texts were burned. Their teachers were silenced. Their followers were hunted. Why? Because Gnosticism didn't just challenge religious authority, it challenged the very foundation of power. It whispered something deeply unsettling, that the God of this world may not be the highest God, that unseen rulers govern human perception, and that inside every human being exists a hidden spark of something divine, something not meant to belong here. These ideas were never meant for the masses. They were considered dangerous, liberating, and uncontrollable, and yet they never fully disappeared. Fragments survived, symbols resurfaced. And in moments of great technological and spiritual crisis, the same questions always return. Is this world real? Who truly controls it? And why does something inside us feel out of place? In modern times, these ancient questions sound strangely familiar. Simulation theory asks whether reality is artificial. Movies like The Matrix suggest humanity lives inside a manufactured illusion. Artificial intelligence forces us to confront what consciousness truly is. But long before computers, code, or digital worlds, the Gnostics were already asking these questions. They believed humanity suffers not from sin, but from ignorance. Not ignorance of facts, but ignorance of its own origin. They believed something went wrong at the very foundation of reality, and that humans were never told the full story. The most unsettling part: Gnosticism doesn't begin by asking you to believe anything. It begins by asking you to remember, to question why this world feels incomplete, to question why suffering is built into existence, to question why truth feels hidden, fragmented, and controlled, and most importantly, to question who benefits from your ignorance. By the end of this video, you will understand why Gnostic texts terrified religious authorities, why they were erased from history, and why their message still feels dangerous today. Because if Gnosticism is even partially true, then reality itself is lying to us. Before we uncover what Gnostics believed, we must first understand what Gnosticism actually is. To understand Gnosticism, we must first understand a single word: Gnosis. The word Gnosis comes from ancient Greek, and it simply means knowledge, but not the kind of knowledge you read in books, not information, not belief. Gnosis means direct inner knowing. It is the kind of understanding that does not come from being told what is true, but from suddenly realizing it for yourself. Gnostics believe that truth cannot be handed down by authority, it cannot be enforced by rules, and it cannot be accepted blindly. It must be experienced. This is where Gnosticism separates itself from traditional religion. Religion often says, believe and you will be saved. Gnosticism says, know and you will awaken. Faith asks you to trust something outside of yourself. Gnosis asks you to look inward. Religion builds systems of obedience. Gnosticism begins with inner awakening. For the Gnostics, salvation was not about avoiding punishment or earning reward. It was about escaping ignorance. They believed humanity's greatest problem was not sin, but forgetting who we truly are. Gnosticism was never a single, unified religion. There was no central church, no universal rulebook, no one authority. Instead, it was a loose collection of ancient spiritual movements scattered across the Mediterranean world. Different groups, different texts, different symbols, but all of them shared one core idea, that something about this reality is deeply wrong, and that humans carry within them the key to understanding it. Gnosticism emerged during the early centuries after Christ, at a time when many spiritual ideas were competing for influence. Some groups focused on ritual, some focused on law, some focused on faith. The Gnostics focused on awakening. They believed that divine truth was not exclusive. It was not owned by institutions, and it could not be controlled. This made them dangerous. As Orthodox Christianity began to form structured beliefs, hierarchies, and authority, Gnosticism became a threat. Because Gnosticism taught that you do not need priests to reach truth, you do not need intermediaries, and you do not need permission to awaken. That authority does not come from above. It comes from within. As a result, Gnostic teachings were labeled heretical. Their writings were banned. Their ideas were erased from official history, but the core belief survived. That salvation does not come through obedience. It comes through awakening, through remembering what was forgotten, through seeing reality as it truly is, through reclaiming the knowledge hidden inside you. Gnosticism does not ask you to submit. It asks you to awaken. But this raises a disturbing question. If knowledge is what saves us, then knowledge of what? To understand why Gnosticism was considered dangerous, we must now step into its map of reality. Not the world as we see it, but the world as Gnostics believed it truly is. According to Gnostic thought, reality does not begin here. It does not begin with matter, bodies, or physical laws. It begins in a realm beyond form, a realm they called the pleroma. The pleroma means fullness, not a place in space, but a state of perfect completeness. It is the source of all existence, pure consciousness, pure wholeness, pure being. In the pleroma there is no lack, no division, no suffering. Everything exists in harmony. From this fullness emerged divine expressions of consciousness known as eons. Eons were not gods in the human sense. They were aspects of divine intelligence, emanations of awareness. Each eon represented a quality of existence, wisdom, truth, depth, insight. Not separate beings, but living expressions of the divine source. One of these eons was Sophia. Sophia represents wisdom, but in Gnostic mythology, something unusual happens here. Sophia, in her desire to understand the source more deeply, acts independently, not out of rebellion, but out of curiosity. In this act, balance is disrupted. What emerges is not another eon, but something incomplete, something unaware of its origin. This being is known as the Demiurge. The Demiurge is the creator of the material world, the architect of physical reality. But here is the critical distinction. The Demiurge is not the ultimate source. It does not originate from fullness. It originates from separation. In Gnostic thought, the Demiurge is not portrayed as purely malicious. It is portrayed as ignorant, unaware of the higher reality beyond itself, unaware of the pleroma, unaware of the source it came from. Believing itself to be the highest authority, the Demiurge shapes the material world in its own limited image, a world of division, a world of decay, a world of struggle. This is why Gnostics viewed the material universe so differently. To them, this world was not a perfect creation. It was an imitation, a copy of something greater but flawed. The physical world, in Gnostic understanding, functions like a trap, not necessarily a punishment, but a confinement, a realm where consciousness forgets its origin, where beings identify with bodies instead of essence, where survival replaces wisdom. This is why Gnostic texts often describe the world as a prison, not because existence itself is evil, but because it is incomplete. A system that keeps beings focused outward, while the truth lies within. When you look at this idea through a modern lens, the parallels are striking. Simulation theory asks whether reality is artificially constructed. The Matrix imagines a false world designed to keep humanity distracted and compliant. Artificial intelligence now creates entire digital environments indistinguishable from reality. Gnosticism suggests something similar but far older, that this world is a constructed system, that its rules are not ultimate, and that consciousness does not belong here by origin. The Demiurge governs the system, and beneath it operate forces that maintain order, control, and limitation. But Gnosticism does not end in despair, because something from the pleroma still exists here, something the system cannot fully erase, a trace of the original fullness, a fragment of divine awareness, hidden but not destroyed. And that raises a profound question. If the world is flawed, if reality itself is incomplete, then what does that make us? If Gnosticism stopped at describing a flawed world, it would offer only fear. But it doesn't. At the center of Gnostic thought is a radical and empowering idea. That something from the pleroma exists within you, a fragment of the original fullness, a spark of divine awareness, not created by this world and not owned by it. Gnostics believed that human beings are not merely physical creatures navigating a broken reality. They believed humans are exiles, beings whose true origin lies beyond the material world. This is why Gnostic texts draw a sharp distinction between the body and the soul. The body belongs to this world. It follows its laws. It ages, desires, and decays. But the soul does not originate here. It comes from elsewhere. It carries a memory of something greater, even if that memory is buried deep beneath layers of distraction, fear, and conditioning. According to Gnostic understanding, the greatest threat to this system is not rebellion, but remembrance. This is where the concept of the Archons enters the picture. Archons are often misunderstood as monsters or demons, but in Gnostic thought they are something far more subtle. They are rulers of ignorance, forces that maintain the structure of this world by keeping consciousness limited. They operate through systems, through beliefs, through fear, through identity. The Archons do not need chains or walls. They govern perception. They shape how reality is interpreted, how meaning is assigned, and how individuals see themselves. In modern terms, we might recognize these forces differently. Social conditioning, psychological programming, cultural expectations, endless distraction. Anything that keeps you identified solely with your body, your role, or your fear serves the same function. This is why Gnosticism does not emphasize learning new information. It emphasizes remembering. Gnosis is not the accumulation of facts. It is the recognition of truth that already exists within you. A sudden clarity, a moment where something clicks, where you don't just understand, you know. This is what people today often describe as spiritual awakening. The feeling that the world you were taught to accept no longer fully explains your experience. The realization that much of what you believed was inherited, not chosen. Breaking conditioning, seeing through mental programming, questioning narratives that once felt absolute. Gnostics believed this awakening was not rare, it was inevitable. Because the divine spark cannot be erased. It can be buried, distracted, suppressed, but not destroyed. This is why certain ideas feel familiar the moment you hear them, why some truths resonate without effort, why something inside you responds before your mind does. It is not belief responding, it is memory. And if this knowledge has the power to awaken individuals, to weaken systems built on obedience, to shift authority from external control to inner truth, then one question becomes unavoidable. So why was this knowledge erased? By now, one thing should be clear. Gnosticism was never just a spiritual philosophy. It was a direct threat. Not because it called for rebellion, but because it removed the need for control. Institutions have always depended on one core assumption: that truth must come from authority, that meaning must be delivered from above, and that salvation must be managed, mediated, and granted. Gnosticism shattered that model. It said you do not need priests to reach truth. You do not need permission to awaken. And you do not need to submit in order to be whole. Authority, according to Gnosticism, does not live in institutions. It lives within the individual. There is no blind obedience in Gnostic thought, no demand to accept doctrine without understanding, no requirement to surrender your inner judgment. For emerging religious systems built on hierarchy and control, this was unacceptable. So Gnosticism was labeled dangerous, heretical, forbidden. Its writings were hunted down. Its teachers were silenced. And its worldview was removed from official history. For centuries, it almost worked, until something unexpected happened. In 1945, a collection of ancient texts was discovered in the desert near Nag Hammadi in Egypt, hidden in jars, preserved by time. These writings, often called the Lost Gospels, revealed a version of early spirituality that had been deliberately erased. A spirituality centered not on obedience, but on awakening. Not on external authority, but on inner knowledge. And in the modern world, these ideas are resurfacing for a reason. We are living in an age where reality itself is being questioned. Artificial intelligence now creates worlds, voices, and identities. Simulation theory seriously asks whether our universe is artificial. Trust in institutions is breaking down across cultures and belief systems. The old explanations no longer satisfy. People are no longer asking, "What should I believe?" They are asking, "What is real?" This is the same question the Gnostics asked centuries ago, and the same answer continues to whisper beneath the surface. That truth is not imposed, it is remembered. Gnosticism does not ask you to adopt a new belief system. It does not demand loyalty, and it does not offer comfort through certainty. It offers something far more unsettling: the responsibility of awakening, the responsibility of questioning reality, of reclaiming inner authority, and of remembering what was forgotten. Maybe the truth was never lost. Maybe it was hidden, buried, suppressed, or maybe it was waiting for you to wake up. If this stirred something deep inside you, don't let the truth fade. Subscribe and continue the journey into the hidden knowledge they don't want you to discover.